Welcome everybody to GoLocal Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. If you haven't heard, Bob Kraft is buying a house in the Hamptons for $43 million. Sounds like he wants to be the Jets owner, not the Patriots owner. This is not a good sign. This is how it started with Tom Brady buying houses in other places. Stay tuned for more on that and the reaction to it. But he's in a neighborhood on Long Island with people like Leon Black, who is Jeffrey Epstein's good friend. So I guess all works out in the neighborhood. Let's go to Dr. Michael Fine. He's the former director of health in the state of Rhode Island. Dr. Fine, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Josh. It's good to be with you.
Okay, so Bob Kraft aside, let's talk about some of the things that are going on, not just locally, but globally. Obviously, India is turning into, we've discussed it for about 2 weeks straight, a really tragic situation. 1.4 billion people, and literally they're just thousands and thousands are dying daily. The reports of the number of cases appear to be wildly underreported, and that's with 400,000 new cases. Dr. Jha over at Brown said that they're underreporting by 2 to 3 times the factor. And what's emerging is this term called a double mutant. Can you walk us through what the double mutant is and why we should care about it here in little Rhode Island, here in North America?
Well, I'm not sure double mutant is a particularly accurate term. You know, there are many different mutations on the on the DNA of, or the RNA of viruses, of this virus. And each of those different mutations can change the behavior of the virus. I think what they're seeing in India has a couple of different changes, similar to some of the changes we've seen. It always makes us worry that a particular strain, a variant strain, will be particularly transmissible or particularly lethal. The problem is the studies about transmissibility and lethality lag by a couple of weeks or months the description of these mutations. So we don't know for sure how this will impact us. In the lab, it looks like it may have some significant impact around transmissibility. We don't know yet about lethality. And we just don't know what the impact will be. However, it's really clear from previous variants that once a variant has expressed itself and spread in another part of the world, it is coming here. And if it's more transmissible than the variants that we now have, it will become the transmissible, or the most common variant in circulation, as the British variant has. Josh, a couple of weeks ago when we first started talking about it, I think it was more like 3 than 2, you started asking why we didn't close off air travel to India. And you were totally right. We finally got around to doing that today. But by today it's too late. I'm fairly sure that variant is in the United States and is beginning to be transmitted, and we will end up seeing it soon. But this just characterizes the United States and the world's day late, dollar short, penny wise, pound foolish, snowflake response, which is what sets us up for the kind of chaos that we've had from this virus.
I think the key for me to have good insights into this virus is I know nothing, so I just play off common sense. We talked about this with top Brown experts back in February of 2020 about why not close down borders. If China was closing down internally within China, it would only seem to make sense that we would not allow folks from China to travel to the United States. We skipped that part. President Trump did implement it somewhat later, but well after we raised those questions. Let's talk about, though, the big concern here. Obviously, a more infectious virus strain is concerning for those who aren't vaccinated, but also that this double mutant is the term of art that they're using. The question is, will those who have been vaccinated be protected against this new strain? And obviously you say, we just don't have enough data to know that.
Yep. We don't and won't for a while. Um, I think everybody's seat of the pants is the vaccines seem to be working, but the data is in the data.
Right.
Let's see. Remember, India is one of the worst vaccinated places in the world. No more than 10% of its population is vaccinated. In the United States, we're pushing on at least 50% having one vaccine, and that's where we are in Rhode Island, maybe a little bit ahead of that, but not much. And you can't find out about how a vaccine is going to work till you've got it distributed and in the arms of most of the people, which we still don't.
Yeah. Let's jump over. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll keep reporting on this. Let's jump over to children. The number of new cases in children are exploding in the United States. Obviously, they aren't vaccinated, and as you just said, nearly, in the case of Rhode Island, a little more than 50% of the adult population has at least one dose or more. This is concerning, not per se because children are likely to die from the virus, but because they become de facto kind of super spreaders.
Well, I don't know about super spreaders, but vectors for sure. They keep the virus in circulation, at least until we get them vaccinated, and that probably won't be for all kids, and probably be for kids over 6 months. That probably won't happen until the late fall or early winter. I would disagree with one thing. I don't think the number of COVID-19 cases in kids is increasing. The numbers I've seen suggest that the percent of positive cases that are kids is increasing. But the total number of infections is staying about the same. It dropped a little bit from January. The reason the percent is increasing is because the number of positive cases in adults is decreasing.
Good, excellent correction, and I apologize for that. Do we see, though, the concerns about because children continue to hold this, that we'll continue to have problems? And I've got to fix an earpiece. Excuse me for 1 second.
Mm-hmm. While you're gone, in answer to your question,
I apologize.
No problem.
My question is, both at home and in schools, and most kids, especially in Rhode Island, are going back into the classroom. Are we going to see them move the virus and kind of continue to keep it in circulation as that total number doesn't increase, but it's certainly they're the most consistent in carrying the virus?
Yeah, the virus is going to stay in circulation among children and among people who are unvaccinated. Very simply put, and a few number of people who are vaccinated who have vaccine failures, that's about 5%. So the virus likely stays in circulation. We saw a seasonal decrease, or what appeared to be a seasonal decrease last summer. One hopes we will get that as well, and that seasonal decrease is aided by the end of school, but we don't know that for sure that's going to happen. Now, the one good piece of information is actually interesting information that comes out of Israel, which is when more than 50% of the adult population in Israel got vaccinated, the number of cases in kids who were not vaccinated dropped by a factor of 2. Now, again, one hopes that will happen, but we can't say for sure it will happen. There may be conditions that are specific to Israel and Israeli schools that are different from us and our schools. The other thing that we have to watch out for is with the lessening of restrictions, whether we will actually be increasing viral transmission in Rhode Island because of those lessening of restrictions. That's a kind of storm that's waiting to happen. I hope it doesn't, but I think, my infectious disease And epidemiology brain says, you better watch out.
Dr. Fine, the good news is Pfizer is going to submit to the FDA and de facto the CDC as well for emergency use authorization for their vaccine to be approved for those 15 to 17 years of age. That potentially at least takes up one gap of those under 18 years of age.
Yeah, or reduces the number of people who are unvaccinated. Our challenge is to get to 80 to 90% of the population vaccinated. And, the problem is, and we'll talk about the state's numbers in a little bit, I suspect, but our numbers of people being vaccinated is dropping like a stone. So we're increasing, but we're not increasing very fast now, not here, not around the United States. The president is now talking about shifting vaccine from states that are basically refusing vaccination to states that want vaccination. And some of us think that we ought to be thinking about sending some of that vaccine to India if we have any extra vaccine, because the pandemic in India will likely spark transmission around the world.
Dr. Fine, let's go to those numbers. It has been days and days since we've been over 10,000 tests in Rhode Island in a single day. And let me go back. We used to bump up against 20,000 and over 20,000 on a daily basis. The state's testing program has fallen off the table.
Well, it's certainly fallen in the last couple of days. I think we were at 16,000 on the last day of April. But when we saw 7,000 yesterday, clearly that's way too many. I'm in the group of people who thinks we should be testing at least 100,000 people a day. So when we see a number of new positives of reported 181 with catch up about 230, but only on 7,000 tests, that means we're probably about stable and seeing 400 to 500 new infections a day, or about 7,000 or 8,000 Rhode Islanders who are walking around with COVID at any one point in our history.
Yeah, we were 7,000 yesterday, 5,000 the day before. Over the weekend, there wasn't much testing. It's certainly not what the McKee and the Department of Health promised. They promised that we would keep steady with testing and, in fact, increase testing in order to keep, as we open up, workplaces and restaurants and bars safe. Can't keep them safe if we don't know where the disease is.
Agree. 100,000 tests a day is what we should be doing. And we're doing just a fraction of it. And my guess is a bulk of what we're doing is coming from the colleges and universities on the one hand, and people who want to travel or have just returned from travel on the other. I don't think we're doing nearly enough routine testing of workplaces, stores, and any place where people gather. That's what you really need to do in order to maintain the population free of disease.
Yeah, listen, Brown just graduated. They are out of here, and they usually were 1,500 to 2,200 on a daily basis alone. So I assume that's consistent against most of the colleges and universities, proportionally, according to their student bodies. The other element of this is the deaths keep rolling along. It's 2, it's 3, it's 4. Every now and then there's a 0 or a 1, but it's on a weekly basis. It's 10, 15 or more people have passed away because of this virus.
Yeah, we've settled down to about 100 deaths a month, and I think it's going to stay that way unless we see a rapid reduction in the number of people who have the disease every day, which we have not. The one bright spot in that relatively is that we've had no pediatric deaths reported in Rhode Island. No kids have died of COVID here. What we're hearing is, and what we're seeing some data that suggests, there are about 250 kids who have died around the country, or about twice the number of kids who die from flu in a yearly flu year. And I fear that with disease circulating and with our loosening of restrictions, which may cause disease to circulate a little more among kids. I fear that we will have a pediatric death. I think we've been lucky so far. But boy, I hate to think of that because I think if it occurs, it will have been a preventable death that we failed to prevent.
Dr. Fine, the McKee administration seems to want to change the subject from this. He has intimated that he's going to press conferences only once a month. He has a separate press conference weekly in which he doesn't want the press to ask any COVID questions. He's going to be shutting down most of the major vaccination centers. Testing has diminished. You know, it all sounds good, but just across the country, you see Oregon in an absolute lockdown, as strict a lockdown as that state has seen. Washington's getting hit again, which is where it all started in the United States in the end of February, beginning of March in the United States. Washington, a nursing home in Washington, was really the first outbreak. You know, we can trick ourselves and try and convince ourselves, but this virus doesn't go away.
No, I mean, it doesn't go away. And, you know, I don't think we are close to mission accomplished, regardless of what the press release says. You know,
even if you order the sign or about to order the sign, as Governor McKee intimated, that doesn't, if you order the sign, that doesn't mean it's mission accomplished?
Apparently the virus doesn't read the sign. The virus is primed and ready to go regardless, and it will continue unrelenting. You know, the question, you know, Governor Raimondo is going to be in town tomorrow. I understand. The question is, you know, will the Teflon approach where policymakers make decisions that cost lives, but advance in their careers anyway, will that approach continue to work for this governor? Or will, if we have problems again, people actually hold him accountable?
Dr. Fine, you know, I think Rhode Islanders appreciate you've been viewed literally millions of times over the past year on GoLocal Live. But there's another side to you, that of the author. Talk about your latest work. Let's wrap up there. You've got a very timely story for this time of year.
Yeah. I have a story, you know, I put out a short story once a month through a website called michaelfinemd.com. The short story, Mother's Days, is the one we've just released. It's a pretty poignant story about a young mother in the mountains of East Tennessee and her relationship to her mother and her tragic relationship to her daughter. It's about 2,500 words. It doesn't take long to read, and I think puts Mother's Day in a new context.
Dr. Michael Fine, always appreciate you joining us. For everybody else, stay tuned. It has been a busy, busy start to the week on GoLocal. These stories have been breaking and breaking quickly. Stay tuned for more updates. And also, as I make the appeal, these numbers are not going away. Oregon is just locked down. Please wear your mask. And also, please get vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, you're the obstacle to us having a great party. You're the person who won't allow us to return to normal. Please get vaccinated. I just got my second shot. It didn't hurt. A little after effect, and all is good in less than 24 hours. Please, please get your vaccination. Be safe and stay tuned for more.
That's exactly right, Josh. Thanks. Remember, please get vaccinated and fix for us what our politicians have not been able to do, and let's get rid of this virus once and for all.